If you want to feel a little lighter and a little more free in your life, you want to stick around for this conversation. I had such a wonderful time talking to Lee McKenzie about so many amazing things in life and how we can really transition from a place of darkness to a place of empowerment in our lives. Lee is a life coach from New Zealand, currently living in Canada, who is deeply passionate about supporting women to live expansive lives of purpose and freedom. Through her one-on-one coaching, Lee supports driven humans to embody their most aligned self and live an authentic life that is unique and true to them. She loves supporting women to stop living on autopilot, overcome their bullshit, limiting beliefs, remember what lights them up, and craft a life that feels free, expansive, and oh so good. Lee is also the host of the Be Free with Lee podcast, which is a loving school for your personal development and soul growth, where she talks about all things personal development and supports you to embody the best version of yourself and create the life you came here to live. I loved connecting with Lee, and I'm so honored to have her on the podcast today. She is just a breath of fresh air and just lights up the room. And I guarantee you'll feel a little bit better after listening to this conversation and feel like you have more clarity to move through your life in a more peaceful way. All right, welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. I am so honored to have Lee McKenzie, so thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, Kelly, I'm so excited. This is going to be so good.
I know. I can't wait. I absolutely love what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into it, do you mind sharing what brought you to where you are today? And what's the story behind your transformation that led you to helping the people that you help?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I feel like it's always so hard to be like, okay, this is exactly my story. But if I wanted to start somewhere, it would be like my brand name, Be Free with Lee, because it's an evolution of, I guess, who I am and where I've kind of come from, and ultimately represents what I do today and who I help and how I help them. And it's ultimately about freedom and purpose. So for me, I started this work outside of uni. My first job outside of uni was when I was going through a really hard time transitioning into the working world after being, a student for like all your life. You never work 40 hours for more than a few weeks at a time. And it was super challenging to that transition. And then also realizing what I studied wasn't actually the job that I got from my study, wasn't something that was fulfilling in any way. And I ended up having mental health challenges, and I was maybe 8 hours from my hometown, and I was with my partner at the time. So I had a few good things going on, but ultimately the job really sucked my soul. It was just so draining. And yeah, I got anxiety and depression. And from there, it was almost as though once you hit a sort of rock bottom, the only way well, not for everyone, but it's like you just go up from there. So I started to really look after myself in that space. And it sounds so cliche, but I found meditation and mindfulness, and it really changed my life. And it led me to starting a creative outlet, which was a travel blog, Be Free with Lee, about New Zealand travel. And also I was writing a little bit about mental health in there as well, just really as a creative outlet to sort of help me heal. It was like I was going through this process with someone, or to help someone later on. So that's where it started it would have been about, what am I now, 30? So it would have been like 8 years ago.
Yeah. And it's I love how you talk about that you're we're helping people through your own journey. And it's sometimes we can see outside yourself and it just becomes this meaning and purpose behind that of I'm going through these things. I know other people can relate. How can I take my challenges and what I've learned to help someone else? How has that
Absolutely.
transformed you where you now are taking everything you've learned to help other people in that position?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, I feel like for me, I deeply resonate with people who've been there, done that. And so I feel like I live and breathe that. So whatever I'm helping. So now obviously Be Free with Lee is a life coaching brand, which changed from New Zealand travel. So I help people discover their purpose, find meaning and fulfillment in their lives, and really live an authentic life. And that came from me trying all these different things and and not things not working out and getting fired and yeah, hitting rock bottom and all the things, the burnout, all that stuff. So I feel like I've been through so much in my life that I have some wisdom there to share from lived experience, but also that passion for helping people. I think you need to really marry the two, right?
100%. And I want to go back like more in that transition phase, because like for someone listening who's like maybe where you're right after, university, like maybe they're in that position, like, okay, well, how do I get to that? That person like that you are 8 years later. Like, can you bring us back to how that played out? I know you're talking about meditation and mindfulness. And can you talk about like what were some of the thoughts and experiences you had as you transitioned from that really dark place to a place where you feel like you're more empowered?
Yeah, gosh, I guess it's a journey, right? But at the most, like, the pivotal point was when I was like, I'm sick of this. So what was happening was I was going home from work really just sad, and I would shove the duvet over my head and cry and just spend most of the evening in bed. And if it wasn't that, I was doing something else, which was really intense exercise. So I was doing track and field at the time, and I'd go train for like 2 hours after work. But during the workday, I also went to the gym. And then when I got home, I'd go for a run. Like, it's just insane.
Yeah, I can so
So,
relate.
oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's just like you're really punishing yourself or really self-sabotaging, just being a complete, just isolating myself and not eating and just, yeah. So I was doing that for a while, and then I found out that my work, it was the Ministry of Justice, and it's a government agency, and they have free counseling. So I don't know how I came across that. It might have even been on the resources page on my work like homepage. And I was like, right, okay, free counseling. Obviously something's not right. I will reach out to this person. And then I started seeing a counselor, and I was just talking about my job and how terrible the job was. And I was blaming people all the time, and she was lovingly like trying to encourage me that I could make some changes. And it was really challenging because she was like telling me that I had depression, but I didn't want to hear it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I eventually listened to her, and she encouraged me to do meditation, which I had already tried at university. And so it was just like those little pieces had kind of come together that I realized that I was sick of the way I was acting, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, there's something more, but you don't want what you want, what you have
Yes.
currently. Yes.
Yes. Yes. I knew that wasn't it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And because it's like to have that awareness and realize that like I can't continue to live like this. But then it's like, did you find that it was like breadcrumbs that you would like get these little hints as you go, or like what was that journey? Because sometimes we can get stuck in the how. Like you can know that you
Mm,
want more, but then you get stuck in like, well, how do I get there? And then it sometimes becomes so paralyzing for people because it feels like such a leap that they don't have that confidence or maybe even vision to how to get there. So like,
yeah.
what was your experience of that, like in your path that you took
Yeah.
to get there?
Yeah. Oh, I love that you asked this because this is so true. I can just imagine, you'd be like, oh, just stop stressing out. Like, tell
Yeah.
someone that. It's like, that doesn't
Right.
work.
Mhm. Exactly. Because then you stress out more because you're just focused on how much you're stressing out. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I guess I mentioned like meditation and mindfulness, and literally that was the thing that changed my life. So I found a guided meditation app. It's called Calm. It still
Mhm.
exists. And I would go to the gardens just outside my work on my 10-minute break. So usually in the 10-minute break, I'd go and sit in the office and try and make small chat. And that was another really torturing part of the job.
Yes.
So
I
then
get it.
yeah, I'm like, I'm not doing this. I just decided like my 10-minute break, I'm gonna own my 10-minute break. And I
Mhm.
went and did my guided meditation. And it became this almost little cocoon or sanctuary of just 10 minutes to myself. And I felt so just free in that space, that I wasn't in the office and no one could talk to me. And I literally just had this time for myself. And I did that every day for, yeah, until like, I still do it. But it was something that really opened my mind to seeing other opportunities for growth and other ways out. So that was the space I needed to just reset, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you talk about the consistency because that's key. Because you can do it for, when you're in such a place that your mind's everywhere, you can do certain things for maybe like a week or two and you don't really see the changes necessarily, but it's like it's when you stick it out that's when you start to see that transformation.
Yeah.
I want to go into that even more because meditation, I'm a huge believer in meditation myself, but I don't know if you had this experience when you first started. It's like it just felt like a quiet space to ruminate on negative things and all the things you wanted to almost escape in your mind. Can you talk about like when you first started and when, like, what did you notice as you transitioned where it began to feel more free for yourself?
Yeah. So I would do guided meditations deliberately to stop that train of, oh my gosh, I hate her. She's telling me off all the time, or like, this sucks. And I'd be like, okay, like, let's just put someone else's voice in your head so you don't have to listen to your own.
Mhm.
And I'd find I wouldn't like too much of a pause. So I found guided meditations that they talked quite a lot, which was really helpful because then I actually craved a little bit of space. So that after the consistency, I was like, oh, I just need to take a few more deep breaths before she talks.
Yes, that's amazing. Yeah. Like, and
Yeah.
the fact that you start noticing that's like that change in your system where you actually wanted the breaks, like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really cool. Becomes the evidence of like, oh, something is shifting within my
Yes.
mind. Like, that's
Yes.
really cool. Yeah.
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 And
I had a very similar experience. And yes, I love that you shared that because I hope that for someone who's testing out meditation or trying it, realizes like, just stick with it. You'll get to that point.
yes, that's it. And that's the thing. It's like so many people give up before they reach that. It's almost as though you just like when you're in your early 20s and then you kind of just it's almost like you wake up one day and you're a little bit more mature.
Mhm.
It's kind of like that when you're meditating to find the benefits. It doesn't actually you can't pinpoint it, but it does happen, you know?
Yeah. Yep. I get, yes, I totally understand what you're saying. Yes. And
Yeah.
like, so I want to like dive into something because something going off of that, like how important is it to surrender, like
Mm,
surrender to the experience? Because we can get very stuck in this like controlled everything, like especially when there's like a fear around everything and you feel like your life is like spiraling or not what you want and you're like you can anchor down really into that control. Like how
mm.
important was it for you to relinquish some of that control and surrender to the process?
Yeah, gosh, it was so hard being such a like active person and always, like really putting what I want first and really go, 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 like getting out of uni, going straight to a new job. And I didn't want to sit in having no job for a while. And so the active surrender is something that I'm still constantly learning to do. But I think it came from that moment when I was in with the counselor and she was like, look, like, you've got depression. And I was just like, no, I don't. I don't have that.
Mhm.
And it's almost as though I just listened to her. It was like she told me enough times that I was like, okay, yeah, all right. And then I started to go down the path of what that looks like to heal from that. So yeah, it was so important. I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't listen to, I guess, her and myself and needing to heal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like sometimes that perspective outside yourself is like gold. Like you don't
Yeah.
realize how much you're in your head and can't see things clearly when you're living it and breathing it every second. And then it's like,
Yeah.
it just sometimes takes that sentence from somebody and then you're like, oh, okay. Like, and especially when you start to accept, like, here are my circumstances. And
Yeah,
yeah, it makes such a huge difference. So thank you for sharing that. And
of course.
I want to like transition to something that you talk about and I love and like I think we hear more about it, but I think sometimes can get lost in what it actually means to live like this. And what I'm talking about is authenticity, like
Mhm.
living your authentic life. And I think most people understand, like, I know when I first started, I was like, okay, I can understand the concept, but what
Yeah.
it actually means to like live authentically. And so that's what I want to talk about. And I want you to share like how can we start to live authentically and like what does that feel like? What does it look like for practical application?
Yeah. Oh, I feel the same with the word authentic. I'm almost as though thinking there needs to be a different word.
Yeah, it almost feels overused and not very understood. Yeah.
Yes,
And I feel like,
exactly.
yeah. And it's like when I was in like a place of like kind of feeling lost in my life, I was like, okay, that sounds nice. Like
Yeah.
it's so far and you're like, okay, how do I get there? You know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's still something that I guess it's an evolution, right? So it's constantly changing and growing, but I guess at its essence, it's who you are like in terms of what you like to do. And this is where you can go so layered in this because it's like, okay, but what do you like to do? Are you doing things because that's what you were doing when you were brought up, or it's what so and so says you like to do? It's really about, if we break it down, it's so just basic. It really is about your values, like what is important to you and
Mhm.
how do you want to live your life and would like to live your life, and then it's about doing that. So
Yeah.
it's really simple, but there's so many layers, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. And one thing, like, is like you're so right. Like the idea of it is so simple, and then I feel like sometimes the application gets very messy.
Yeah.
Like one thing I think that like is important. Like I want to hear your perspective on this. Is like what I've experienced is like the more I got in touch with my authentic self, the more relationships started to like become there became more resistance in relationships that I had in my
Mm,
life. And so that was a big challenge for me. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that because I think this is something that probably most of us experience when we are anchoring into who we really are, when we've been maybe putting on the mask to please other people. And
mhm.
then we start to speak our truth, like what happens with relationships and how can we move through that without feeling like we're losing things in our life in such a
Oh
profound way.
gosh. Yeah, I feel like yeah, the people closest to us are our closest triggers, and they're also reflecting back to us, I guess, really who we are. It's like, okay, well, are you sure?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, which makes it even harder. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And I love how you say like anchoring back, because that's actually what it is. It's not about doing more and trying to figure out who I am. It's actually just getting back to your essence, which is before you took on all these things and the opinions of others and expectations and all that stuff. So really it's about an act of surrender to who you are, which is, it's even a bit of a matrix saying that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be like you develop all these limiting beliefs and things that people tell you and it's like even like I have two young kids and it's like I'm very aware of this but I'm like, "Oh, you're so smart." And then like, I'll say things, "You're so this." And like I know and even though they're uplifting, like am I identifying who my son is by saying you are this, you are this? Like
Yeah.
you start to
Yeah.
accumulate things in your life. Like
Exactly.
so, and if you don't have someone who's an authority figure who is supportive and you're getting a lot of negative messaging, like it can be a lot of sludge to work through to
Yes.
get down to that
Yes.
essence.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh gosh, I feel like you're never gonna do the right thing as a parent, are you? It's like you're just gonna say things you're like, oh, actually.
Yeah.
But it's just life.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like how important is it for us to understand who we were as children in that?
Yes.
Because if it's before, who we truly are is like how we showed up as kids, and then
Hmm.
we accumulate all this stuff on top of it. How can
Hmm.
we get in touch with who we were as children again?
Yeah. And that's really, I think, about tapping into your wants and play and enjoy, and taking it back to the really simple things of, what do you like to do? And do you want to just try things just because you might like it? You might actually hate it. It's fine. It's really just about talking to yourself like you would a child, and being curious, I think, is a really key word.
Yes, I love that. And I love how you're like, you might hate it, you might like it, but either way, it's information. And now you're
Yes.
starting to learn about yourself. So I think that's like what you said is so great because there's no right or wrong answer. It's just
Yeah.
not staying in the place that you're at. Try something new. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, so true. And I guess I forgot what you asked before. It was about, oh,
Connecting with your a child.
yeah. And then what happens when you're doing that and people come,
Yes, the
yes,
resistance you meet
the
from
resistance.
people. Yes, when you
Yes,
tap into your authentic self.
yes, yes. And I feel like that is probably where it's endless work because we say we don't, some people say you don't care what other people think, but we do. And I think it's really, that's why it's really important to maybe just keep it to yourself for a while, like about what you're trying to figure out. You're just trying these things and it might work out and might not. And that's okay. And I think once you decide that you're like changed or you start living in a way that is different to who you were before, that's when people will question you and you have to be really content with who you are. So actually the work starts with you.
Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
just living out like the stronger you that connection is, probably the less like I've noticed my like the stronger that connection is, the less people can rock you from external
Yes.
forces.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Yeah. For someone who's listening who's like, okay, like how do I start to do that? Like how do I like what's one thing I can do today? Like that could, get me into a place where I start to tap into that. Like where could
Yeah.
someone start to do that?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And again, it comes down to just what do you want to do and giving yourself permission that it's okay to want something and for it to not work out. So it's about really just like honoring that curiosity in you and really it's about loving yourself regardless. So I would start with probably it depends what people are into, right? But for me it would be a way to get into that. So that would be affirmations for me. And it's like it's okay to try new things. And just say that to myself for like a month, you know? And then you can implement other things if you like, how did that go today? Or so and so said this to me and it made me feel. It's really about like a self-reflection journey and adding in little tools that will support you in that. And
Yeah.
also support from other people who, the power of coaching. I find that it could be a counselor, it could be a mentor, a coach, someone who will be your biggest hype girl when you can't be, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Because often that journey can feel so lonely. Like when you're starting to transition into a place that feels more freeing and authentic, it's like that can feel very scary because you're literally like leaving what you used to know, the familiar. So
Yes.
I totally agree. Just having support that is 100% there for you, like makes such a big difference
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
and seeing things from an outside perspective, just like you had the experience of.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just unreal. It literally moves you so far ahead
Mhm.
than
Yeah.
by yourself.
Yep. And earlier, so you talked about values. So I want to go into this a little bit more because I think we often hear about values, but it can again when we've maybe lived years so disconnected from ourselves because, you know, I know a lot of people who listen to my podcast, it's like you're always living for someone else. You're always trying to like take care of the other person. You're trying to like people please. And it can be really hard to get back into like, well, what do I want? What are my values? What's meaningful to me? How can someone start to identify their values and what truly is when they feel so disconnected from themselves?
Yeah, yeah, such a good question. And again, the word values, I'm like, oh, just seems so robotic and like, I don't know, quite clinical.
Yeah, yeah.
Really, it's just what's important to you and it represents how you show up in the world and they change. So what I like to teach is that people go through, I guess, the categories of their life and ask themselves what's important to them in that category and what do they want that category to look like, and just kind of riff on that. And then they usually can come out with a few keywords. And then what we do from there is sit with that. And then it's like, okay, is that actually really important to me? Because lots of the time it's so beautiful, but my clients come up with like kindness. And I'm like, yes, that's so nice. And of course, that is something that you hold dear because most of them are either people pleasers or recovering people pleasers. And so I totally get it. But it's not until they really look at, okay, do they want that area to look like, that they actually come up with like a quite a different value. And sometimes it can be like community and connection. And that's quite different.
Yeah.
But and everyone's journey is quite different. So it's really just about getting quite boring and methodical about it, but going
Mhm.
through the different areas of your life, having a look at, yeah, what's important to you there? What do you want that area of your life to look like? And then also just probably taking some time to reflect and be like, okay, what about in a week's time? Let's have a look. And then also, some people won't be able to do that themselves, identify a bit of a map or keywords. So that's when I really, yeah, love to help people with this. And then yeah, it's also about asking the questions to follow up, to dive deeper, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's like the quality of your life is based on the quality of your questions. And it's like,
Yes.
even if you don't have the answers, you're going to get your mind going and seeking out them. So, yeah, I love that. That's 100% so valuable just to start asking yourself better questions.
Yeah.
'Cause it can be so easy to get into those questions, when you're in a tough place to be like, what's wrong with me? Why
Ugh,
did I do that? Like, why do I keep thinking this? And it's like,
yeah.
if you are asking yourself those questions, even if it's in your head, you're only going to get more of those answers you don't want. So,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, when
I
you
think
start asking those better questions, you're going to get better answers.
you had a
Yeah.
podcast on that actually that I thought was so great. It was just like, instead of asking yourself, yeah, what's wrong with me? It's like, okay, what did I learn? Is there anything I could have learned from this experience?
Mhm.
Just that
Yeah,
simple reframe, way
that's
more
it.
empowering.
Totally, exactly. Yeah. And it's like even bad things happen in your life. Like you asking, what is the lesson in this? What do I have to learn? Like
Yeah.
even just asking yourself that versus like, why is this happening to me again?
Yeah.
Like that is there's such a different energy behind each of those.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you can start asking yourself better questions, like that makes such a difference. So I love that with going deeper into your values, asking yourself those questions and then sitting with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so very important.
And so easy as well.
Yeah, exactly. Just like kind of just right, even just, take 5 minutes here and there. It doesn't have to be like a full day of, deep reflection, but like small increments that usually tends to work wonderfully with that.
Yeah, absolute. Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah. One thing I want to talk about is I want to hear your perspective on this is when you were saying like you were in that really tough place, you wanted something different, you're going through your journey. How important was it to have self-worth through that and realize that you were worthy of more in your life?
Yes. Oh gosh. It was pivotal, but then also at the same time, I knew that I was
Mhm.
like, I think it was the words like, I don't deserve this. And like I had this innate kind of knowing of my worth, of being like, actually, I'm meant for something more. And
Mhm.
that was something that I luckily didn't really have to work on. It was like I knew I deserved better.
Yeah.
And and so that was a really great, I guess, foundation to be like, well, what does that better look like? And for me, it was like, right, I do not have to work for a boss that treats me like this. And I actually, oh, maybe I could be my own boss. And then, yeah, got me in that kind of train
Mhm.
of action. So self-worth is, you have to have it or you wouldn't even change, you just couldn't.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Is that something you've been working through too, or do you feel like it's like, is that an evolutionary process for yourself as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there's certain areas of my life, like for example, in work, I knew that I deserved better. So that was like something that was really pivotal, foundational. But then other areas of my life, I was like, oh my gosh, like for example, let's just take like not recently, like 4 years ago, dating. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And I really had to work on my self-worth in that
Yeah.
area because
Mhm.
it was all new to me and yeah, never been single as an adult. And so I had to completely start from scratch.
Yeah. And I think that's such a profound statement there is that there's different areas of your life. And I think that's really important for people to understand because you had the example of like, at work, you knew you deserved better, but then other areas you didn't realize you deserved better. So it's like breaking it down can be really important for that process and not realizing, not thinking that like it's just I have self-worth or I don't. Nothing is black and white. Like it's not you have it or
Yeah.
you don't. Like it's like where do you need to address it and what are the
Yes.
areas? So I love that. Like,
Yeah.
what are some of the areas that maybe you noticed in your life? Like you talked about work, dating. What are some other areas that you've had to really dive into? Like, okay, what's my worth in this area?
Yeah, I guess recently it would be business and feeling that imposter syndrome and who am I to talk about, XYZ, and you get like bringing it back to getting people in your life questioning you. And my dear brother is like always questioning me, and he doesn't even understand what I do, and neither does my dad. They really have no idea what I do, but they've got judgments and opinions on it. And
Yeah.
so it's something that's been coming up in like my journals in the last couple of years, and me having to be like really sitting with it and also understanding, okay, is there work for me to do here? And
Mhm.
there obviously is. It's about really stepping into my confidence
Mhm.
and my wisdom and really believing in myself, and that's ongoing.
Yeah. And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lifelong journey. Absolutely. And what I like, what you just said, I think is really poignant is that like, I have work to do here. It's like you're realizing like there's always something that you can take control of and have power within yourself.
Yeah.
And because it can be really easy, especially when you're having people who are very close to you, maybe throwing some judgment or doubting you to like then be like, okay, am I wrong in this? Like, is it on me? But realizing that like it's not changing what you're doing, it's just elevating yourself further to further empower yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would
it's
not be
sweet.
giving up because of that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's so crucial because it's so easy to take someone's external judgments and then place on yourself. And like, well, not, am I looking out, like, am I trying to create something that's not realistic? Am I
Yeah.
doing something that's not like really where I deserve, should be? Because it's
Yeah.
so easy to question yourself when other people question you.
Oh,
So
yeah.
So like I think what you said is just so poignant and realizing that like, okay, that just tells me I have to strengthen myself even more to bounce off some of those judgments because I have this deep knowing of who I am and what I want. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
tremendous, like
Yeah.
tremendous. And also a marker of how much work you've done that that's your mindset in it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel
I
like
I, I love
that's
that.
so, yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that.
Well, I think it's important to see like those stages, and like here are some markers of like you're realizing like there's no changing what your meaning and purpose of life is. There's just strengthening yourself and that you have that power. And I know in the beginning you talked about you were blaming people for your reality. And then
Mhm.
here you are taking full responsibility and realizing you have the power all along. Like I
Mhm.
hope for someone who's listening, you see that transition of like when you blame and you put your power outside yourself, you're really relinquishing your power. But here you are embracing your power and be like, oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing me where I need to strengthen myself again. Like,
Yes.
I think it's
Yeah.
amazing. Like that whole full circle journey. It's just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. And I love that. It's really nice to hear that reflected back, because that's obviously how I've, yeah, experienced it, but then also seeing that in others, it's like, yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's it. Like when you see someone standing in their power and just have this like full out love for themselves and they make decisions based out of love for themselves. I mean, there's nothing more fulfilling than that.
Oh,
Nothing.
yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And just going to have like, can you share one of the experiences you've had with one of your clients? Like, I would love to hear something like a transformation, because I
Yeah.
think it's through those stories that really anchor into someone who maybe is like doubting themselves and their ability. Like, can you go through someone who maybe was in a tough place and they transformed into that place of like
Yes.
self-love and authenticity?
Absolutely. And I can share her name publicly because she came on the podcast. So Sophie, yeah. So I love when clients, we work together on a 3-month journey, and all of my clients reach at least two of their goals. Usually we set three throughout the time, and it's just so beautiful. Like it literally lights me up helping people, and I feel like you're the same, just seeing people stand in their power and yeah, really own their worth. It's like, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, Sophie was struggling a lot with her feeling worthy at work.
Mhm.
And she has the degree, she's got the experience, like on paper, of course she's got it. But you know what it's like when you don't feel like you can actually take on what people would like you to do, like a work project, and just feeling, yeah, she's like, oh gosh, I don't know why they give me these projects. I don't think I can do it. And we really worked on that, on just like honing into her I guess authority, and helping her see that she was good at this job and she was more than good, right? And that came through, everyone's so different, but Sophie tried meditation and affirmations, and a lot of it, actually, most of the time when you are working on things like this, it comes into another area of life. And it was actually a lot about slowing down for her and feeling grounded and present, and getting some space away from that negativity that we spoke about, like, why is this happening to me, or I'm not good enough, or I can't do it. And so we really worked on her feeling grounded and present. I think that might have been in the wording of one of her goals. And one of the beautiful things that I just can remember is her making a habit of, when she was catching the bus to work, it was to look around at the people outside the bus, and think about something that she liked about what they were wearing or doing. And it
Mhm.
sounds so just cheesy, but she really loved that. And it was something that got her off her phone and out of the autopilot, and really just connected back to her present moment. So
Yeah.
that was really cool.
Yeah, I love it. And just using your senses and tapping into
Yes.
that. Like that's, yeah, it's really the gift to bring us into presence. So I love that example. And it's like now I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start doing that. Just having those like visual cues, those cues throughout the day to bring yourself back. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Such a practical strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what it's about, right? It's about, okay, what can you actually implement right now that will, yeah, it's the baby steps, but what will change over time. It's not something you can just be like, okay, I feel worthy, I'm just gonna give it a go. And sometimes that does work, like if you're doing a presentation or something, it's like, just give it a go and see how you go, and then afterwards it's like, oh, I feel really good, like I did it. But oftentimes you need those baby steps approach.
Yes, exactly. It's like literally rewiring your whole brain. It's got a circuitry that's telling you you're not worthy. You have to like reformat everything. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And it is like those consistent things, like, while it may not seem like much, is so tremendous, because instead of that being a moment where maybe she would think negatively about herself, it becomes a positive moment. So it's like those
yes.
little things that you start to rewire the circuitry. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And even
Amazing.
noticing like the negative chatter at work, she noticed it, whereas
Yeah.
before she didn't even notice it, but she was in it, you know?
Yeah, such a
Yeah.
difference. Yes, when you can remove yourself from it and be like, oh, those aren't true. Like those thoughts are not true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for sharing that
Yeah, of
story of her
course.
transformation. Like, because I think that's really where it is. Like when you see somebody that you can maybe relate to, and it's like, where she was to like where she is today, it just gives people hope of like, okay, even if I've dealt with this for 20 years, like there's still hope in changing it. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, I love
Yes.
that. And so for someone who wanted to like work with you, get to know more about what you offer, can you share with some, where they can find you and what you have going
Yeah,
on?
of course. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I'd love to connect with some of your listeners. That would be fabulous.
Hmm.
So everything is Be Free with Lee, as you
Hmm.
would imagine it's spelt. And so I'm most active in terms of like communication on Instagram. So you can send me a DM, that's all good. And I have my website, befreewithlee.com. I've also got the Be Free with Lee podcast, and that's, yeah, really my favorite place to connect with people, even though it's not live time.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no better way. Like a podcast, you just have like that intimacy and like, yeah, just so much
Yeah.
value. And so, yeah, I love that. And I will make sure I put everything in the show notes. So definitely connect with Lee. And I just can't thank you so much for everything you shared today. It's been
Of
such a fun
course.
conversation and something that's just so valuable for so many of us to hear
Yeah.
and hear and hear again.
Yeah, of course. This has been
Yeah.
so fun. I feel like I could just talk to you for hours.
Yes, same. Yes, I love it. And the cool thing is that we're just about to record for Lee's podcast after this. So, if you want more, definitely listen to both. You're gonna get a lot of value, and we're talking about probably very similar things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah, so if you love
absolutely.
this, definitely listen to Lee's podcast too. And again, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for everything you shared today.
Of course. Thanks, Kelly. So good.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Rewiring Health. I hope you found our conversation both enlightening and empowering. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Rewiring Health so that you never miss an update. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you could take a moment to rate and review the show, it would mean the world to me and help others discover the power that we all have within us to create change and create the life that we truly, truly desire. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me and sharing the energy of the show.